Episode 4, How the Murphys Lived. The Murphys lived in a Metropolitan Boston neighborhood, Cambridge, at 34 Fairmont Avenue, in a three-decker in the middle flat. It had 5 rooms, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room, and a dining room. We were 7 kids, and my mother and father. We rented month to month what was called a cold water flat. When I was very young, there was a coin-operated gas-fired gizmo behind the big black Glenwood iron kitchen stove that my father would feed with quarters to make hot water. One day it disappeared, and the only hot water available for bathing, etc., had to come from the big black kettle on the big black stove in the kitchen. I assumed Dad couldn't afford to feed it the quarters anymore. We had an oak icebox in the back called second floor landing. After paying an iceman, he would regularly bring a 25-pound cube of ice up the back stairs and put it in the icebox. Food that needed to be kept cool was kept in the insulated compartments of that icebox. Under it was a round drip pan for melting ice that needed emptying regularly. There once was a pet hornpout named Spud living in that drain pan. My brother had caught it in the Charles River and brought it home. My sisters objected loudly with horror to that catfish living in the house. I slept in the dining room with my only brother, Gary, who was 7 years older. He was the prototype of a big brother, tall, smart, hip, brave, and loving to his little runt of a brother. He and I shared a double bed which doubled again as a sofa during the day. All 5 of my sisters, Maureen, Brenda, Ellen, Claire, and Gail, slept in one bedroom which was stacked with bunk beds. It had one jammed closet that could have been used by Ripley as the most chaotic storage area in the world. My parents slept in the other bedroom with a crib in the corner for the regularly arriving babies. Another sister, Mary Ellen, died in a diarrhea epidemic at the Cambridge City Hospital soon after birth. Although my father had tried many entrepreneurial endeavors, by the time I came along, he had a steady but unfulfilling job at the Mass Transit Authority, the MTA, later to become the MBTA, the quasi-government bus, trolley, and subway system. His father, my grandfather Pat Murphy, was a 6'5" blonde immigrant from Buttevant, County Cork, Ireland, born in 1865, and a trolley starter in Central Square, Cambridge, for the Metropolitan Railroad, later the Boston Elevated, the predecessor of the MTA. I have read that during Pat's time, horse-drawn trolleys in Boston used 3,600 horses to operate at 700 cars. Grandfather Pat Murphy had an Irish history of being a horseman and experience with that kind of equine operation. He later ran the Boston Elevated engine-run trolleys too. My father was listed as a janitor at MTA South Boston Power Plant on A Street, but he really did all the bookkeeping and the payroll for the purchasing for the engineer who ran the plant. However, he earned only janitor pay, which, although it was a union shop, was minimal when raising 7 kids. We scraped by. Money was always scarce. Dad had an expression he used regularly that I inherited and use today. When life gets tough, he would say, you got to take your lumps. We bought our meat and produce at Haymarket Square, what is now Quincy Market, at the open-air stalls. It is now a tourist and yuppie marketplace. We bought our bread and baked goods at what we satirically called second-hand bakery shops, such as Ruth Evelyn's just outside of Central Square, Cambridge, or Dorothy Muriel's in Brighton's Union Square, where the rolls, muffin, cookies, etc. were at least 1 day old and often older. We bought our regular groceries at the Manhattan Market or Carl's Market in Central Square. Our daily needs were filled at a small First National, or what we called the First Nash, store on Magazine Street. The First National store chain was owned by an Irish family, and all their store managers had brogues. I remember our rent being $26 per month paid to the landladies, 2 old Irish maids named Winnie and Sadie Riley. We lived there for over 30 years. The 2 kerosene space heaters, one in the kitchen and the other in the living room, kept us warm in the winter. One of my chores was to refill the 3-gallon oil tanks by carrying the empty tanks to the cellar kerosene storage drum, fill them up, and lug them back upstairs and reset them into the space heaters. That was how the Murphys lived in those long ago olden days. Thank you for viewing or listening to my podcast episode. I really appreciate it. If you liked it, and if you so choose, I ask you to send a good review and perhaps refer friends who might be interested in this podcast series. Again, my thanks.